And we got a call about some people hanging around too long, making guests uncomfortable.
We're just eating. We haven't done anything wrong.
Yeah, well, this isn't really the place for you people to linger. Maybe wrap it up and head out.
Why would we leave? Other families are eating too.
Because people don't feel comfortable.
We are not leaving.
I'm not asking anymore. Wrap it up.
The afternoon felt ordinary. Sunlight cut through the diner windows at a low angle, landing across checkered tablecloths and half-empty coffee cups. The smell of grilled onions and burnt toast hung in the air. Families talked over each other. A toddler near the window threw a spoon onto the floor, and his mother picked it up without even looking, because that's just what you do. At table 7, Marcus Carter was in the middle of losing an argument about dinosaurs. "Dad, the T-Rex could absolutely beat a crocodile," his son Darius, 9 years old and completely certain about everything, said with a mouth half full of fries. "Darius, chew first," his mother Renee said without looking up from her phone. "He's not wrong though," Marcus said, grinning, and Renee kicked him lightly under the table. Their daughter Amara, 6, was building something architectural out of sugar packets. Nobody was stopping her. It was that kind of afternoon. Slow, easy. The kind you don't think about much until later when you're forced to remember every single detail of it. Marcus had ordered the patty melt. Renee had the grilled chicken wrap. The kids had shared a basket of fries and were now negotiating over the last few like small lawyers. Everything was normal. Everything was fine. Then the door opened. The officer who stepped in wasn't rushing. He wasn't responding to anything visible. He stood just inside the entrance for a moment, one hand on his belt, and he looked around the room the way someone looks around a room when they already know what they're looking for. His gaze moved past the older couple near the window, moved past the 2 teenage boys sharing a milkshake, moved past the man in the booth who hadn't looked up from his laptop in 40 minutes. It landed on Marcus, and it stayed there. He crossed the floor without speaking to anyone, without stopping, without hesitation. He reached table 7 and stood at the edge of it the way people stand when they've already made up their minds. "You people are going to need to wrap it up," he said. No introduction, no explanation, no question. Renee looked up from her phone. Darius stopped mid-chew. Amara's sugar packet tower wobbled. Marcus set down his sandwich slowly. He heard the words. He understood the words. And yet he sat with them for a moment, because sometimes your brain needs a second to confirm that what just happened actually happened. "Excuse me," he said. "You heard me," the officer said. "Time to go." Marcus looked at his plate, at Renee's plate, at the basket of fries the kids were still working through. He looked around the diner at every other table where people were sitting, eating, existing without anyone standing over them. "We're eating," Marcus said. "You've been here long enough," the officer replied. "Long enough," Marcus repeated the phrase carefully, the way you repeat something when you want the other person to hear how it sounds. "We ordered 15 minutes ago." "We got a complaint," the officer said, "people feeling uncomfortable." "Who?" Marcus asked. "That's not information I'm required to share." "So you can't actually point to anyone?" The officer didn't answer, because the answer was no, and he knew that Marcus knew that, and still he didn't move, because the point was never the complaint. The complaint was just the door he'd walked through. Renee set her phone face down on the table. She recognized this moment. She had grown up being told stories about moments exactly like this one, and she had spent a significant portion of her adult life quietly hoping she would never have to live through one herself. She looked at the officer's face and understood immediately that hopping hadn't worked. "Every other family in here is still eating," she said. "You walked past all of them and came straight to us." "I went to where the issue was," the officer said. "We're not an issue," Marcus said. "We're a family having lunch." Something shifted in the officer's expression. Not doubt, not reconsideration. Something closer to irritation, the specific kind that comes from feeling like someone isn't accepting something they're supposed to accept. Look, he said, his voice dropping just slightly like he was doing them a favor by lowering it. People in here don't feel comfortable. That's just how it is. It's nothing personal. Marcus looked at him for a long moment. You people, he said slowly. You walked in here, looked right at us, and the first thing you said was you people, and now you're telling me it's nothing personal. The officer crossed his arms. I'm telling you to leave. And I'm telling you we're not going to. The words landed flat and clean. No aggression, no performance, just a statement of fact the way you'd say the sky is blue or this sandwich cost $11. A woman at a nearby table had stopped pretending to look at her menu. A man near the counter had turned his stool slightly. The diner had that particular kind of quiet that isn't actually silence. It's the sound of people choosing not to make noise because they're too busy paying attention. You really want to do this, the officer said. I don't want to do anything, Marcus said. I want to finish my lunch. The officer reached for his radio. I've got a disturbance at Riverside Diner, he said into it, requesting backup, non-compliant individuals at table 7. Non-compliant. Renee felt the word move through her chest like something cold. She reached over and rested her hand over Amara's without looking at her. The little girl had stopped playing with the sugar packets. She was watching the officer with the quiet, focused attention of a child who doesn't fully understand what's happening, but understands completely that it matters. You just called for backup, Marcus said, for a family sitting at a table. You refused a lawful order, the officer said. You haven't given a lawful order, Marcus replied. You've given an instruction with no legal basis, no verified complaint, and no cause. Those aren't the same thing. That landed differently than the officer expected. You could see it, a small recalibration happening behind his eyes. You sound like you think you know a lot, the officer said. I know enough, Marcus said. Phones had come out now. Not all at once, not obviously, but steadily. People weren't raising them dramatically. They were just holding them the way you hold something you might need in a moment, angled slightly, recording quietly. 2 minutes passed, maybe 3. The officer stood at the edge of the table saying nothing, which was its own kind of pressure. Marcus sat without moving. Renee watched the door. Then it opened. 2 officers came in quickly, scanning the room, finding the situation in about 2 seconds. One of them, a woman with her hair pulled back, took in the scene with an expression that suggested she was already doing math in her head. The other was younger, maybe mid-20s. Still reading the room. What's the situation? The woman asked. Disturbance, the first officer said. This table was asked to leave, refused to comply. The female officer looked at the table. Half-eaten food, 2 kids sitting still, a man and a woman who looked about as dangerous as a Tuesday afternoon. What's the nature of the disturbance? She asked. They've been here too long, the first officer said. Got a complaint from guests feeling uncomfortable. Did you verify the complaint with management? A pause. I had enough to act on. That's not what I asked, she said. The first officer's jaw shifted slightly. I made a judgment call. Based on what? Marcus asked. Based on what I observed. Which was us sitting here eating. The female officer looked at her colleague with an expression that wasn't quite a look but was close enough. You talked to management, she asked again, quieter this time, directed only at him. No, he said, one word clipped. She exhaled through her nose. The younger officer was looking at the phones now, at the angles, at how many of them there were. Sir, the female officer said to Marcus, I apologize for the disruption. Can you just tell me from your perspective what happened? Marcus told her, calmly, chronologically, starting with arriving at the diner, ordering food, and ending with the radio call for backup. He didn't editorialize. He didn't raise his voice. He just described events in sequence, the way someone describes events when they know the sequence itself is damning enough. When he finished, the female officer nodded once and didn't say anything for a moment. "You people," Darius said quietly. Everyone looked at him. The 9-year-old was looking at the first officer. "You said that twice," he said. "You people, what does that mean? Which people?" Nobody answered. Darius turned to his father. Why did he say it like that? Marcus looked at his son. The question was simple. The answer was complicated in the specific way that certain answers are complicated when your children are the ones asking them. Because the truth is true, but the truth also costs something, and you can feel exactly what it costs in the moment you say it. "It means he made a decision about us before he knew anything about us," Marcus said carefully. "Because of how we look." Marcus held his son's gaze. "Yeah," he said, "because of how we look." Darius looked back at the officer, not with anger, with something closer to sadness, the particular sadness of a kid encountering something he was too young to have to understand. "That's not fair," Darius said. The first officer said nothing. Whatever he had walked into this diner expecting, it wasn't this. It wasn't a 9-year-old looking at him with that expression and saying that's not fair in a voice too honest to argue with. "We're going to get the manager," the female officer said. Her tone made it clear this was not a question and not a suggestion. The first officer started to say something. "Now," she said. They moved toward the back, and for the first time since he had walked in, the first officer was no longer standing over table 7. The space he left behind felt immediate. Renee let out a breath she had been holding without realizing it. Marcus reached across and put his hand over hers. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Not really," she said honestly. He nodded, "Me neither." Amara climbed from her chair and positioned herself on her mother's lap, not saying anything, just deciding that was where she needed to be. Renee wrapped both arms around her. The diner had gone fully quiet now in a way it hadn't been before. Not uncomfortable quiet, something more like collective stillness. The kind that happens when people have watched something unfold and are sitting with what they saw. The woman who had stopped pretending to look at her menu set it down completely. She looked at Renee. "I want you to know," she said, "that was wrong. What he did was wrong. I've been sitting here the whole time and I saw everything." Renee looked at her. "Thank you," she said. It came out quieter than she intended. "I recorded it," the man near the counter said. "All of it, from when he walked in, if you need it." "So did I," said someone else. And then from near the back, the diner manager appeared. He was maybe 50, with flour on his apron and an expression that indicated he had just had a conversation he had not enjoyed. Behind him came the female officer. The first officer was not with them. "Mr. Carter," the manager said, stopping at the table, "I want to apologize to you and your family. I spoke with my staff and with this officer." He paused. "We never received any complaint about your table. None. You are welcome here. You've done nothing wrong. I am sorry this happened in my restaurant." Marcus looked at him for a moment. "Thank you," he said. "I appreciate that." The manager nodded and stepped away. The female officer looked at Marcus. "The officer who approached your table has been removed from this call," she said carefully. "I want to be clear that what occurred here does not reflect the standard of conduct that is expected." She paused. "I'm sorry." Marcus nodded slowly. "I know you're trying," he said. "I know that, but my son just asked me why a grown man with a badge looked at our family and saw a problem, and I had to answer that, in a diner, on a Sunday." He shook his head slightly. "That shouldn't have to be a conversation I have with my 9-year-old." The officer held his gaze. "No," she said quietly, "it shouldn't." She left. The diner slowly returned to itself. Noise came back gradually, like a volume dial being turned up. The toddler near the window threw his spoon again. The man at the laptop resumed typing. Darius ate another fry. "Dad," he said after a moment. "Yeah, we won, right?" Marcus looked at his son. "We didn't leave," he said. Darius thought about that. That's the same thing, he decided. Marcus looked at Renee. She was looking back at him with an expression that contained about 14 different things at once, the way her expressions often did. He could read most of them. He picked up his patty melt. It was cold now, but he was going to finish it anyway. Because they had come here to eat, and that was exactly what they were going to do. Outside, the afternoon continued as it always does, indifferent to what had happened inside. But inside, at table 7, a family sat together and finished their meal. And sometimes, in the quiet, ordinary, unspectacular act of simply refusing to leave, something true gets said about what people are made of.